Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Youthman. Today is day 2 of our 13 home theater tours in 4 days, and we are back for the second time in my friend Scott Newby's home theater. Smile, Scott. Last time you didn't smile very much.
I can't stop smiling.
So we have been having a ball. Yesterday we visited 2 incredible home theater tours. I'll link those at the end of this video. Actually, at the end of this video, I'm going to link to Tony's home theater tour. I did that about a year and a half ago, as well as Scott's. Today in this video, we're going to be talking about some upgrades that Scott has made in his home theater. So this won't be a complete tour. It'll be more about the things that he has changed over the past several months and since I came last, maybe a year and a half ago. And so, Scott, man, thanks so much for having me back in your home theater.
I'm glad you're back.
Let's talk about, now Scott had surgery recently, so it's going to be hard for him to kind of turn this way, so you're totally cool. Look at the camera. But Scott, just kind of tell us about some of the upgrades that you've made in your system over the past several months.
Well, the biggest thing is when you came here the first time, it was very last second. Room was still getting put together of how I wanted it to be.
Yeah.
I pretty much got like a 12-hour notice, hey, because Exponent got shut down, coronavirus was going crazy, so like, hey, can I show up in 12 hours? And I just kind of finished up as much as I could. And I had seats on order, and I was still trying to figure my bass out and still trying to get a 2-channel game together. So now that I had more time, I got the room in a lot more state that I was happy, especially to, to show off a little bit. So no, my biggest deal in this room, because I am in a smaller room, I had 14 subwoofers in here, and they're all different shapes, sizes, box tuned, stacked all over the place, and it looked like a crazy game of Tetris going on in here. So
so just for the people that didn't see the first video, you said you had 14 subwoofers in here, right?
Yeah, I had 9 18s, a 15, and 4 of the Clips THX Ultra 12s at one time in this room. And it just it made my OCD kind of go crazy, and even with tuning, I made it all work, but obviously there's limitations and trying to put limiters on subs that couldn't keep up with the other subs. It was kind of a hassle, and I just knew I could do better. So I wanted to get to a point where I actually consolidated and make more sense and not take up so much of the room, and then even at the end of the day have better performance. Yeah. So that's where I wanted to be with the subwoofers and with the 2-channel, because I get into vinyl, not hardcore-ish, but definitely I appreciate vinyl, so I wanted to have a good DAC and a good player and get my 2-channel game set up and get a different amp for when I'm doing 2-channeling. So there's been quite a few changes in this room.
Yeah. So before we get into that, so Scott, how big is your room?
Roughly 14 feet by 16 feet.
Okay, so we're 16 wide?
Yeah.
Okay, so 16 feet wide, 14 deep, 8-foot ceilings maybe?
Just under 8, yeah.
Okay. And so it's not a massive size room, and so a lot of you may be wondering, can I do a home theater in a small room, maybe a bedroom, a little bit larger size bedroom? 100%. Scott has got a ridiculously awesome sounding setup. I enjoyed it the last time I was here, but this, honestly, it took it to a whole new level, and it's kind of odd to think that you went from 14 subwoofers to 4 subwoofers.
Well, I went from 14 drivers to 8 drivers.
Oh, drivers. Okay,
yeah,
okay. Yeah. So that's better. So 14 drivers to 8. 18s. Yeah, I had to count them. 8 18s, JTR subwoofers. And I can tell you right now, in the demos that we did, this was a whole new experience. Last time, if you saw the video, I was smiling ear to ear. I had never experienced that much pressure in a home theater setup. I've done it in car audio, but not in a home theater. You got a lot more cubic feet to try to pressurize that room. But this was absolutely insane. Now, for those of you that mentioned even in the last video, man, who would listen to a home theater at 145 dB, watching a movie? We don't. And Scott doesn't. He typically, you're what, a round reference or?
Well, like all our demo clips, I mean, just because we were doing the get-together today was at reference with the subs 10 or 12, maybe 15 dB hot.
Maybe 25 hot,
Yeah. But most of our home viewing, I mean, we're at like, say, -8 with the subs about 10 dB hot. So, I mean, it's really, reference-ish. So yeah, no, it's not. Nobody's gonna sit through and listen and watch that.
Yeah,
and people don't. It's funny because you bring that up because a lot of the people, I don't want to say heckle or whatever they say, but when they go in there in their comments, I've had, roughly 150 people come through this room, and probably 20 of those were the guys that this makes no sense, this and that. And then when they walk out of that room and they're like, this makes a lot of sense. That
makes sense,
it makes a lot of. I mean, like they wouldn't go as the extreme part, but for a normal day using, having all that firepower and being able to play super low frequencies with no distress. I mean, that to me, that was the experience I was going for.
And I think one thing that people don't realize is that, who would need 8 18s in a room? I've had people share on my, my comment section that, I've got 2 15s and man, it shakes the whatever on the walls. Well, that's true. It will do that. But one thing that this setup has allowed you to do, and what I've experienced, is even when you're listening at reference or below reference, you get this really nice tactile feel, especially because he's got 2 behind his 4 seats right here. So that's near field bass. So we're getting, a lot of that tactile bass just coming from that vibrating into the seats. And then he's got some transducers, I believe, as well.
Yeah, each seat has a 1500 watt butt kicker wired to it, bolted to it. And that runs to a speaker power 6,000 amp. That in the last video I had 4 Crown XLS 1502s all in bridge, pushing 1500 by 4, which I really liked at first. But then when I talked to speaker power, is their amps are actually good down to 5 hertz, and that's what the butt kickers are good to. And the Crowns actually start rolling off pretty hard around 19 or 20. So I figured, what was the point of having something that's good to 5 or 6 hertz if I'm not even using any of it? So I sold off all the Crown equipment, and I went with speaker power because all the JTR subs I have, I did the speaker power 6,000 watt amp upgrade. I really like those amps, so I went ahead and got a 5th one to push the butt kickers.
So one thing I do want to mention, that Scott always has a ton of earplugs for his guests. We want to make sure that everybody is safe and that they're not damaging their hearing. I brought my own kind of professional earplugs. And so, it's one of those things where it's cool and it's fun just to see what the limits are. And what's crazy is that we didn't get to the limits of this. I'm not sure literally his house could stand more. And it kind of brings it to a question that I have, is that last time I was here, you had plenty of firepower. I mean, you had plenty of bottom end. It was hitting down to single digits. So, kind of walk us through that process. Why would you want to get rid of what you had? And in this case, you actually went another level in your sub performance. So kind of walk through the process of maybe, where were you thinking on that? Why did you want even more than what you had?
Well, where I was going with that is I reached a level of loudness I wanted to be at, just because I thought, okay, that can be pretty painful. If I want to go any louder, I'm just wasting a lot of money and time. Mm-hmm. So actually, I stopped by JTR's shop one day, and I was talking with Jeff, and I said, man, I wish I could figure something out where I could make more sense in my room, still have my maximum overall output, but just kind of in a smaller package. And obviously these subs aren't small by any means. Yeah. And he put together, he said, if you do 4 of the 4000s in your room, he goes, I believe that you'll be at that same level and you'll probably, gain a ton down low, because before I added the original JTR in this setup, I would fall off around 13 hertz. And now 13 hertz is still low bass.
100%.
That's low bass. I was good from 13. When I added the first JTR, then I was getting in room to 7.5. So the one JTR would keep up with the rest of the subs, but I could never get a house curve to go up. I could just keep it pretty much flat with the other stuff. Mm-hmm. And the way, frequencies work, if you don't know, the lower the frequency, you need a lot more of it for it to make any sense. So, at 12 hertz or 10 hertz, you need to be 10 or 15 dB higher than 80 hertz, for it to make any sense, just because of the way that we perceive, low bass. Right. So I expressed my concerns to him, and he said, well, then just do them all 6,000s, and you have all kinds of power for days. And that's what I did. And when we brought it in room, I threw the meter on it, and before I was in the 146 dB range, and we just cranked it up, and once the meter hit like 145.5, we shut it down. And I said, well, I'm happy because I know when I want to put people in the hot seat, that 140 range will really get people going. So when I finished the tune, we actually found out that from like 7 to 13 hertz, depending exactly at the frequency, we were adding 8, 10, 12 dB, which is, it's tons of output down low. That's why, when we were watching some of that stuff, the solid doors are flapping like crazy. And, but that's where I wanted to be, was actually in this case, less ended up being more, just because I went with a more lower tuned subs with a ton more power getting pushed through them. So, I get a lot of people that ask, they're like, well, you're sitting right on top of the subs behind the seats. They understand the impact, but they just, how can you not hear those over the front subs?
Why doesn't that drown out everything that you're seeing on screen and hearing up front?
Exactly. So, and that's where the tune comes in. You can have your system professionally tuned or remotely tuned. I tune everything myself. But there's a lot of, and that's where mini DSPs come into effect in this system. I run a mini DSP 4x10 and a 2x4 HD.
The HD version?
Yeah, both of them. Okay. But I mean, a ton of delay gets added to these rear ones. So and as you run RU and you start adding everything together and mess with delay, and you see what looks like a crazy mess, turn into like a masterpiece. And then when you sit down and listen to it, it's kind of breathtaking.
And not only just output, I mean, you may be thinking, man, 818s, that's ridiculous, that's crazy, that's a lot of output. Just the fidelity of the entire system. I mean, when we're listening to music, the detail, the clarity, it's not bright. The bass is super, super punchy. I mean, John Wick 3, you feel every punch, but it's quick, it's fast, it's just right there, it's precise. So I love that about your system. I mean, you've spent a lot of time not only just picking out components and what's going to work best in your room, but calibrating it. And I think you can have all the best equipment in the world, but if you don't have it dialed in, if you don't spend some time getting to know that system and how to kind of maximize its performance and make it sound best, then you're kind of throwing money out the,
Well, since the last time you were here, definitely for the mids and highs, I did full room acoustic treatments because I was wanting to do that before you came the first time. Obviously, I didn't have the time, but the whole back wall behind us is done in 4, in some spots 6 inches of safe and sound, and then first reflections, scatter panels. I mean, where I needed to put stuff, it just makes the mids and highs sound a lot better. And with these 818s, because I had 918s before, but the throw on these 18s are so much longer, and the other 18s I had, were roughly around 1900 watts RMS, where these are 6000 RMS. It's just, when you add in the extra long throw in the port tune, and just, you need all that power for that 8 and 9 hertz bass. The 30 hertz, 40 hertz, you can do that with a couple of 100 watts, but and you have to like that, because I've had people sit in my room and be like, hey, that's cool.
Sure.
But it gives me anxiety. It makes me sick. Yeah. That I can't do the super low stuff.
Sure.
And then at that point, it wouldn't be worth somebody to do that. I mean, I understand that. Yeah. But just so people know why I did it, because that's what I was after.
Absolutely. And so you mentioned power. So what kind of power do you have run into the room? Because I think you made upgrades to that as well.
Well, I had to, because all of the amps in these subs and the amp I got from my butt kickers is all 240. I ran 5 separate 240 volt breakers for this room. Each sub is 30 amp, 240 volt, and then I have a 30 amp, 120 volt for my amps, and then another 20 volt 30 amp for all the rest of my equipment, and then the projector's on its own 15 amp.
And then you have a dedicated circuit just for the defibrillator, right?
Yeah.
For the people that don't make it through.
Yeah,
Man,
exactly.
A lot of power coming into the room. And then talking about another side of that power, what about amplification? Because you made some changes there too.
I did. I'm still running Rotel and Sunfire. And I bought the Rotels like 10 years ago, and I've kept them because they're great amps, a lot of good power. I got turned on to Cherry at Exponent, a couple of years ago when I heard the JTR room, and that was before I owned anything JTR or Cherry. I was like, man, this is awesome, but, you know, it's probably $1 million. It should be awesome. And then that's when I met Jeff, and I met Tommy that, you know, owns Cherry. And, you know, there's affordable options for us guys in theater, you know, affordable-ish options. You know, everything, you know, is kind of pricey to a point, but, you know, but it ain't, you know, $10,000, you know, for an amp or something. So I thought, you know, hey, that's cool. So I ended up going with JTR equipment because I was really impressed with that. And then Jeff from JTR actually invited me over to his house, and I heard his massive 15s that you checked out. I was like, dude, that is crazy. And he, you know, showed me that he was using Cherry amps. And then I had a big get-together here, had about 40 people over. And then it was funny because Jeff brought a set of 212s and set them up in my living room. And he had this little cardboard box. I was like, what's that? He's like, oh, I'm going to use this amplifier. Cherry sent it for you guys to check out. And he literally took it out, and it was like portable hard drives. And I was like, oh, you know, what's that?
Cute. That's cute,
I was like,
right?
So, and there's pictures, you know, that I've shared that they're like this tall sitting on my floor. And when he had that thing cranked up, people were, you know, you could feel your pant legs moving from that. I was like, dude, those, and from that point on, I was like, man, I got to get my hands on some Cherry stuff because not only does it sound phenomenal, it's like limitless power. It never breaks up. I mean, you heard the levels we were listening to today. You know, they're
absolutely crystal clear. The amp has plenty of juice in it.
So I did his 2-channel version with all the upgrades. He's got triple rail capacitors on both channels, and I thought, well, I'll start here, and then my next step with him, I could do a 5-channel, which would do my center and then the surround bed channels. But I wanted to start with the front too because I do get a lot in the 2-channeling off of, you know, like Tidal and Amazon Ultra HD and vinyl. So I think the Cherry, you know, with the JTR speakers, it really blends together real well.
Well, Scott, thanks so much again for just inviting me into your home, and Nick and Tony. And I appreciate Tony for kind of organizing this entire home theater crawl. This is basically a tour that we're doing of 13 local home theaters. And you guys are really, really fortunate because they do this every month. They go to somebody else's home, and so they'll come here one month, then they'll go to Tony's and go to Nick's, and they just bounce around each month and just kind of enjoy each other's setup, bring different demo content, and just have a good time. So I wish I had that kind of thing in Florida, and Tony's been working on organizing that and structuring that probably over the past many years, and so it takes time to develop that. But man, like I said, you're really blessed to have a bunch of home theater enthusiasts local that you can kind of hang out with on a consistent basis and learn from each other. I know you guys kind of teach each other.
I just met Tony and Nick, so, you know, I kind of had my own little groupish, and then we got kind of all sucked into each other. So, you know, it was kind of fun because, I mean, I love having you guys over here, but I enjoy going to other people's, and, you know, and some people are like, oh, you know, but we can't do crazy, and I could care less about. I just like how hearing different equipment, seeing different displays, and people have different, you know, demo material, and you're like, hey, I got to go home and check that out.
I've done that.
Yeah,
this week,
you know, so just and just a camaraderie. You know, how many laughs have we had today? You know, it's been a lot of fun. So, and that's what the hobby's about. And I think people, I mean, honestly, because I get a ton of people that message me and ask me stuff. I think people get really caught up in. I got to beat that guy. I got to be better than that guy. When in reality, I think a lot of people, if they, there's been a lot of steps you go to and they're like, hey, is there anything I could change? You'd be like, yeah, you know, your center channel's 3 feet below your TV. Or, you know, your surrounds are all the way at the ceiling, and then people do a couple things and then they realize they get a 50% upgrade.
And they didn't have to spend any money.
Nothing. You know, and to me, that's what the hobby's about. You know, there's rooms out there, of course, that I drool over, but I'm not trying to be that guy.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So I just want to have fun, and I think that's what we're all doing.
Absolutely, and that's really what this whole tour is about. We're not looking at necessarily the latest, greatest, or the biggest rooms. We're going to be going, I think even later on today and even tomorrow, we're going to see some big rooms in this home theater tour, but we're also going to see some small home theaters, some budget home theaters, some DIY kind of home theaters. And they're from different brands. I know we've done several JTR, but there's other brands that we're going to be featured in there. And so my desire with these home theater tours is really just to inspire you guys to be able to look at something and say, man, I could kind of see that in my setup. I've got a basement, or I've got a garage, or I've got a bonus room, or, you know, an extended bedroom. And you would be able to put something, even if it's not a dedicated theater room, even if it's not a projection. We're going to see some some TV setups, you know, and so, but make it your own. Enjoy it, enjoy the hobby. Find some people local that you can kind of connect with like you guys have, and just learn from each other and continue to grow. And man, this has just been a lot of fun. And so make sure you subscribe to the channel. We've got definitely a lot more videos coming very soon as I get those edited when I get back to Florida. So if you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe. And as always, you guys be blessed, and we'll catch you in the next video.